Welcome to the Discovery Podcast, the show where we unbox, discover, and discuss the latest drops in personal and professional development. We are being brought to you by ZenBox. Take control, download ZenBox on the App Store today, and begin your journey of discovery and self-elevation. I'm your host, Andre Paulo, with my co-host, Melissa Spadafora, and we're coming to you from the Toronto podcast studio with our very special guest, Deanna Rose. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, everyone's laughing because I just butchered Deanna's name prior to the start of this, but it's all good. It's all love. Welcome to the show. Today, we're going to be talking about something that's been pretty prevalent in terms of like the nutritional space and the wellness space, which is a plant-based nutrition. And in this case, we're going to be talking more specifically about plant-based nutrition for athletes. So if this is something that you've been reading about, curious about, this is the perfect show. We're going to try to ask Deanna as many questions as possible to kind of fill in the gaps for all of your curiosities. So we'll go right ahead and just find out a little bit more about you before we get into the nitty-gritty. Do you mind telling our listeners a little bit about your background and your passion and interest in being a plant-based athlete yourself, as well as a practitioner in this field?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a certified strength and conditioning coach, and I'm also a sports nutritionist. And I also just graduated from naturopathic medicine as well. So I would say that I'm pretty well-rounded in terms of knowing everything in the wellness world and as well as the medicine world. So I'd say my journey started officially maybe 9 years ago when I had a bad breakup. As everyone goes, that, you know, you turn to health and fitness when you have a breakup. But I've been a swimmer all my life. So I started swimming when I was like 2 or 3. So as soon as I was able to, you know, waddle a little bit, my dad threw me in the water. But all my life I've been an athlete, swimming and competitively and doing a lot of sports like volleyball, basketball. But I've always been a fat kid. Funny enough, because I always resorted to food as a sense of comfort, as a lot of kids do, I think. And I also grew up in an abusive household. So that food component was a huge part in terms of comfort, in terms of just helping me find a safe place. And then, so years went by, and after I went through that bad breakup, I realized fitness is something that I can actually resort to and something that I can depend on for mental wellness as well as physical wellness. And that kind of turned sideways with modeling and bodybuilding. And, you know, I think a lot of people in our society these days is we're so focused on the physical appearance of our body instead of, you know, focusing on how we feel and how we feel mentally as well. And I think that component is really lacking in our world. And through working with clients, working with a lot of my personal training as well as my nutrition clients and going through naturopathic medicine, you know, I realized that the most important part is how you feel in your body. And that's what I found with plant-based diet. So I've been plant-based for about 6 years. There has been times that I slipped and I ate meat, and I actually really love the texture of meat, and that's something that I really love. And I think those times that I ended up having meat here and there is because I just really crave the texture. But yeah, in terms of just how my body feels when I'm on a plant-based diet is so different when it comes to just, you know, the aches and pains that you get and how you feel when you wake up in the morning, and the quality of your sleep and mental clarity is a huge thing I find when it comes to, you know, an omnivore diet versus a plant-based diet.
So what would you say the top benefits of plant-based nutrition are?
I think, if anyone's watched Game Changers, you guys know, you know, the cardiovascular health, stroke, cancer, they're huge things in our world, and especially in North America. No one is starving in this continent. Everybody's been overfed, and especially with meat, there's so much saturated fat. There's so much animal fat that's basically clogging our arteries. Atherosclerosis, which is the cause of heart disease or partial cause of it, is basically plaque built up in your arteries, stiffening your arteries, and and really restricting that blood flow, the proper blood flow into your heart, into different organs, into your brain and all that stuff. And that's what, causes disease basically. And plant-based diet, everything is very clean if you eat from whole foods rather than obviously, Beyond Meat burgers and things like that. Everything's clean, and it rather than clogging, it's going to clean out your arteries and making sure that everything flows and functions properly. And also, if you're looking for a weight loss, that's a great thing. Diabetes is another one that is very helpful when it comes to plant-based diet. If you're eating, a whole foods diet, there's very little bad sugar and refined sugar in that diet. So that's going to be really helpful when it comes to diabetes. And just basic inflammation. And all diseases are, they have their root in inflammation. And when it comes to especially athletic performance, you don't want inflammation in your body. You don't want that achy joint. You don't want that, achy muscle. You want fast recovery, and you want that, waking up refreshed feeling in the morning. So that's going to be really helpful for a lot of athletes out there. And even the average person, you don't want to walk around like a zombie every day. So, yeah.
I love that answer. I had a few questions that I want to add on to what you just said. If someone's, learning about this for the first time, and you mentioned a whole foods diet, what would you consider as a practitioner to be a whole foods diet, just so that people can follow the conversation a little bit better?
Nothing out of the factory. So anything like I'm even really careful with, nut butter. Just because it is, at the end of the day, is the process thing. And I don't really advocate for raw foods either. So things like fruits, vegetables, nuts, legumes, grains, and I think that's all the groups that I covered. So things like that, things that you get from the earth, things that are that you can find in the wild as pure in their purest form as possible. I would consider that as whole food sources, and I would also stay away from things like gluten as well. Mm-hmm.
So for most people, they might hear this and go, "Oh, that's crazy. There's no way I could possibly just eat those few food groups." What would you say your typical diet looks like for the day as a plant-based diet?
Is not just salads. I think most people are happy
That's
to
awesome,
hear that.
because I automatically thought of salads right away. So
and the funny thing is, my body, and for a lot of people, our body naturally has a hard time digesting raw foods. Some people thrive on it. Others it just takes a lot more energy for the body to digest raw food. So when it comes to salads, a lot of people just feel bloated. They have gas and all that stuff. So my day, I love Buddha bowls, and it was a little bit overrated. Things like quinoa, have a little bit of quinoa, have a little bit of sweet potato. I also add a lot of grains, but I steam them instead of, so if you boil anything in water, a lot of the micronutrients leak out into the water, and obviously you're not going to make soup out of that water. So you basically just waste that and dump it down the drain. The best way I would say is to steam your vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, things like that is best steamed. And I find that spices will literally spice up your life. They are so important when it comes to plant-based diet. And even in a meat eater's diet, if you eat not a raw piece, but if you just eat a plain piece of chicken, it tastes nasty. I find it tastes nasty.
Yeah,
I don't know about you guys.
Chicken gotta have flavor.
You gotta, I find, and I think that's what people miss when they're on a plant-based diet is that flavor and that texture. But if you really, so things like jackfruit, I don't know if you guys have tried.
Yeah, I've heard about it. I have someone in my life who's always trying to make me try new things. And I looked at it, I'm like, that looks like it came from space. Like that doesn't even look like a human, plant, like an earthly plant or fruit. Like certain, you know what I'm saying? Like you go to the grocery store and like people are picking out certain fruits and you're just like that looks like a purple cactus. Like, what am I gonna eat that? But yes, jackfruit. I tasted it once. It's like, it's like a flat. I don't even know how to describe it. Like, it's not like, when you eat like a pineapple, it's like a pineapple has a jump, a punch to it. Like this is the opposite. Like it's like a more flat but it's like in that kind of pineapple family. Like that's how I remember it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's why you gotta spice it.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen a lot of recipes of like pulled pork.
Yeah.
They're obviously not pulled pork. They're jackfruit. So you spice it. You put it in whatever sauce you want to put it in. And I usually make homemade from scratch sauces that I make. And if anyone listening want to know those sauces, I'm happy to send it over if you just request it to Unbox. And yeah, just drown it in sauce, put it in the oven, and it won't be flat no more.
I like that.
That's awesome.
Actually, now that you've brought it up, like, where can people find you? Like your website, your social, if they're curious to like follow your journey and just kind of get some quick tips from you outside of listening to it on the podcast, of course. We would like to also be able to find you on the web, social media, and follow you along on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, for sure. So both my website and my social, so my Instagram handle are Deanna, Deanna Rose.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to move on to our next question, and it's kind of a two-part question. So first part is it possible to go plant-based as an athlete? If so, how does this differ from an average individual's plant-based diet?
1,000% yes, of course. And again, if you've seen Game Changers and even the documentaries on Netflix that you can find, like Forks Over Knives, and I can't remember the other ones, but they're a lot of them, focus partially on, but Game Changers is completely on plant-based athletes. So if you look at those, of course, you can definitely thrive as an athlete on a plant-based diet, given that your body allows you to. So a lot of people, like I said, experience a lot of bloating and gas with plant-based diet, and you just gotta, I say it's a trial and error process. You gotta test out what your body likes. So for example, I can't really take legume. Even if I soak beans for 3 days, I still can't take it just because it just doesn't agree with my body. For some people, they love beans and they don't get farty at all on beans. So it really depends on what your body is able to process.
Is it that simple? Like when you say like what your body can take, like, because like someone else might not think that's a big deal, but like maybe for them, it's like my stomach hurting is the limit for me. Like, like if you were to give someone advice, like actual clinical advice, and say like at this stage, this type of symptom or this type of feeling, I personally would scale back whatever it is you're eating because it doesn't agree with your body. What's the minimum?
I'd say if new symptoms come up. So like I said, bloating, gas, pain is something that's too far. Yeah. If there's cramping, I would scale back a little bit or even go see your doctor. I don't think anyone will experience pain on a plant-based diet. At least you should not, unless you have food poisoning or something. Yeah, bloating and gas are the basic stuff. It's just a sign that your body is unable to digest it. And gas is basically fermentation in your gut. So your body's unable to digest certain things. It could just be your gut flora, microflora isn't good enough or enough in terms of numbers to digest certain foods.
And how do you build that up? How do you build up that ability to
eating fermented foods if you don't want to supplement? So supplements like probiotics are great and super popular these days. But if you just want to get from food sources, kefir, so they're now coconut-based kefir. There's kimchi that you can take. There's a really, really great source that a lot of North Americans haven't heard of is a Japanese fermented soybean. It's called natto. It's super sticky and is disgusting, but is really, really good for the gut.
Okay.
And your gut microflora differs from your small intestine and your large intestine. So you got to have a wide range when it comes to supplementation. That's something that I would talk to, a naturopath about. And
are these like long-term solutions, or you're talking about someone could use it short-term, correct that deficiency, and then not have to like supplement as much? Like, are these, or is that a case-to-case basis?
I personally take probiotics on a daily basis. I can't really say clinically, but in terms of for the average person, as long as you eat a whole food diet with a little bit of fermented foods in there, you should be fine without supplementing. But, things like if you're taking a lot of antibiotics within a short period of time, so what antibiotics do is wipe out all the gut bacteria in your gut, the good and the bad. So then you're left with nothing, basically. Right. And in that case, I personally would consider supplementing. And things like certain medications that aren't great for your gut, in those cases, supplementation would be a good idea.
So you bring up medication. So for example, if someone were to get sick, just a normal cough, cold, whatever it may be, while being on a plant-based diet, what would you recommend they do at that point? Because if someone takes antibiotics, it's clearing out the good and bad bacteria in the gut. What else can they do? And in the sense that there might be some foods that, for example, like meat, could provide more nutrients to help you feel better in some source of way, but this plant-based diet cannot. So what would you say for that instant?
I think our society has been brainwashed into thinking that.
So chicken noodle soup is not the way to go.
I don't know. I think your mother was lazy. She just threw in a can of chicken noodle soup and called it a day.
By the way, Mom, I didn't say that. Deanna said that. So take it up with her, not me.
I mean, if you look at nutrient density when it comes to, I think a lot of people, they think chicken breast, it gives you so much protein. But the amount of saturated fat in a chicken breast is not good for your body when it comes.
It tastes so good.
Doesn't it
try jackfruit?
Doesn't it depend though? Like a boiled or steamed piece of chicken can't have that much saturated fat in it.
If you just think about even the human body, our muscles still it contains obviously protein, contains fat in there. So you can't really pick out the protein and leave out the saturated fat. And we're talking about, okay, so if we want to talk about animal fat, so let's talk about the hormones, the antibiotics that go into the mass production process. Even if you get a piece of meat that is, raised in the wild in the mountains somewhere, certain animals, obviously, they carry their genetic memory with them. So when we consume that piece of meat, that genetic memory comes into our body. Does that make sense?
Yes. I've heard that before, yeah.
Yes.
I've heard that before.
So we take on whatever that animal has experienced. So if, let's say, the average person goes to the supermarket and they grab a piece of meat on a styrofoam tray, take it home, eat it. That animal, so they were basically raised to die. And animals can sense that, and that fear, which, when we are scared, our body releases cortisol, which is our stress hormone, and all that stuff we take in. And a lot of people experience, and even with my clients that, they chose to shift to a more plant-based diet, they experience a lot more mental clarity and also a shift in mental health and happiness in general. They, a lot of people report that, okay, I'm not as anxious anymore. I'm not as just irritated all the time. And I've never done like a randomized study on that, but I think part of it is contributing, or has been, a plant-based diet is a contributing factor to mental health. And a lot of research studies has found that.
Yeah, that was an amazing, very thorough answer to the first part of the question. I just want to go back to the second part, which was, how does a plant-based diet differ from the average individuals to the athletes? Because, for example, as you were speaking and we're talking about athletes, something came to mind, which was like, I remember when Michael Phelps was at the height of his dominance, and they were talking about some of the diets that this guy had. He was eating 10 to 12,000 calories a day. Now, how does that athlete who needs to consume that much energy, because he's expanding that much energy in his training, he's in the pool 8-10 hours a day, right? And not only is he in the pool training, you have to keep warm because the pool is cold. So your metabolism is working twice as much.
Yeah.
So then if you were his strength coach, you were his nutritionist, how would you be able to nourish him to be able to train at his peak potential? So I'm just looking at it at the other extreme end of the spectrum for our athletes that are listening.
Right. So there's something called the nutrient density index. So basically it compares calorie per gram or per kilogram of the weight of the food that you're consuming. So when it comes to athletes' performance, I would suggest things that are more nutrient dense. So for things like quinoa, squash, nuts and seeds and things like that contain a lot of calories. So if you look at nuts, they actually, I don't know if you guys have looked at bags of nuts, a handful is like 200-300 calories. It's not, they're healthy, but I mean, if you're someone trying to lose weight, you shouldn't be eating 2 handfuls of nuts every day because, you rack them that calorie really,
it adds up really quick.
Yeah. Exactly. And the one thing with, plant-based athletes is one tip that I would say is to snack throughout the day instead of depending on your meals. Because like you said, Andre, you said that athletes need that constant energy, and because their metabolism is so much faster than everyone else's, if you keep putting fuel into that furnace, then it's just going to burn properly. It's going to burn, even better than, just with the meals instead of having no snacks throughout the day. So if you think about, someone having a chicken breast but feeling inflamed at the same time versus someone who's maybe taking a little bit less calories, but they're feeling a lot more, they just feel lighter in the body. They feel like they're able to move better. They're able to perform better when it comes to speed, when it comes to agility, when it comes to lifting heavier. And I mean, if you look at the strongest animals, I mean, I think they're pretty strong. Gorillas are pretty strong. Elephants are pretty strong. They're all plant-based animals. They're all herbivores. And even with the animals that we consume, we love cows, we love beef, we love chicken. They all just eat grass and grains. Like, none of them really eat other animals.
That's fair. But like the argument that we can make though is that like our bodies are designed to consume both. So like I understand that when you're talking to somebody who's playing plant-based, or you're like watching a documentary like what was it called?
Sorry? Game Changers.
Game Changers. that is an argument that's made. Like these big strong animals all are eating, grass and plants and stuff like that. But like their bodies weren't designed to eat anything else, but we are. So like we can't completely ignore that either, that we have the physical capacity to break down meats, right? Whereas they don't. Like they're like, I feel like I've never seen it, but I'm sure if one of those animals were to eat meat, they'd probably get sick, right? Because they can't handle it. They're not lions,
Yeah.
But I get where you're coming from, but I just feel like we can go deeper. Like we can go deeper into like breaking down why. But so far, I feel like you've really done a great job, especially given that you're on your own here, like on an island, answering these questions. So you've done fantastic so far. Thank you. The next question I want to ask is, what are the steps to building a plant-based diet for someone who's just starting out?
I'd say understand why you're going plant-based. Because a lot of people, I mean, I'm sure everybody knows somebody who's like, I watch Game Changers.
Yeah.
I want to go plant-based. But why? Do you want to feel better? Is it because, certain things are happening in your life, because you're feeling certain symptoms that you want to get rid of? So just like everything, understand your why and then go from there. And I'd say the biggest thing with going plant-based is to plan ahead, because our society is very much a meat and dairy and what else is there? Meat and dairy, and I think that's all. Yeah, so those two are one of the biggest things that we eat is like, oh, let's have a chicken breast and some broccoli and we're good. Even with my bodybuilding coach, she's like, yeah, like you can't do bodybuilding without a chicken breast. You can't do it without meat. But planning is the biggest thing. And there's so many things that you can eat on a plant-based diet. So, a mushroom risotto I think is pretty delicious. I don't know what you guys would think about it. And you can have, like we talked about jackfruit, pulled pork tacos are amazing. Pulled pork nachos, things like that. If you want to have a cheat day, have some nachos and with, your pulled pork with tempeh, with tofu. There's so many like variety when it comes to plant-based diet. And if you think about meat, I mean, I know we make a lot of dishes out of meat, but at the end of the day, we're still just, using that one piece of chicken breast and making it into like 84 different recipes. But when it comes to, fruits and vegetables, with nuts, with grains, with legumes, there's just so much variety when it comes to that. But planning is key. And also when it comes to, meal prepping, you want to have enough things on your list to be able to put together a recipe. And like I said, spices will really change your life because they're so good. Garlic, ginger is my go-to every single day. And so another thing I recommend for people who are just starting out is have, like I said, with spices, have a spice rack of everything that you're going to need, and also have a recipe book. If you don't really know where to start out, I think a good plant-based recipe book for athletes, if you're an athlete, or for the average person even, it'd be a really great source to start off. Because I mean, if you're just scratching your head every day looking on the internet for some random recipe, I don't think that's a sustainable solution. Having, a list every single week, go grocery shopping, have a list of things that you're going to need every single week. That's a plan. And, every great accomplishment needs a plan and little steps to make that plan happen or make that goal happen. So that's the biggest thing. And I have to admit that, a plant-based diet is a little bit more time consuming than a meat.
Would you say it's also more expensive?
No, because if you buy a piece of,
meat's pretty expensive.
Meat is expensive. So my boyfriend, funny enough, actually went full plant-based 13 weeks ago. He used to love meat. And so I used to buy meat from this local butcher shop that it's locally raised meat, ethically raised and all that stuff. 2 chicken breasts is $30 versus a head of broccoli, even if it's organic, is, $4 or $5. And how many heads of broccoli are you going to eat a week?
You mentioned some amazing tools. Not to like put you on the spot. Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned, like, for example, like a recipe book. Is there like a particular author or
I was just gonna ask
you can think off the top? If not,
mm-hmm.
then like maybe like something you can post about in the future. And when we follow you on Instagram, we can maybe pick up on some of the books you might recommend.
For if you're just going for taste, what's his name? I think the name of the book is called The Buddhist Chef.
I can quickly look it up.
He's super popular on Instagram, and I think he has the same name on Instagram, The Buddhist Chef. If anyone's heard of Rich Roll, he's I believe he's a triathlete, or he's like a long distance endurance athlete. He's also plant-based. He's been a plant-based athlete for years. I think he wrote some recipe book, and then there's another. Actually, sorry, I don't remember it.
While you're looking it up, like The Buddhist Chef is written by Jean-Philippe Sire.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it's 100 Simple Feel-Good Vegan Recipes is the name of it. And I'm looking it up on Amazon right now. Paperback is $22. And the Kindle edition is $15. So that's Canadian.
Good research.
Thank you. But
I think another book that I just remember is called No Meat Athlete. You can look that one up too.
Okay, No Meat Athlete.
Cookbook. And the guy, his name is
by Del Sroff Isa.
No,
that's a different
guy.
Oh, that one's for
this is the Netflix
the forks and knives. Yeah. This is a different one.
Matt Fraser.
Matt Fraser
is the guy. And Rich Roll is the guy that I just mentioned. He's the one who...
Matt Fraser and Stephanie Romaine. But yeah, this is amazing. These are some great tools. And I'm sure once someone looks up even the first one, you're going to get suggestions for other books and you can find one that kind of suits you.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you for that.
No problem. And I'll post more as well.
I think that would be great. Like just so people to see some of the tools that you'd recommend and help them kind of start off on their journey.
For sure.
We definitely appreciate that because like this is something that I don't know if I would ever go 100% all the way in, but like I'm the type of person, I'll put my toe in, then my ankle, then my knee, then my hip. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
Slowly,
you tread carefully.
I know a few people definitely try it for 30 days, for example.
For sure.
Just to see how their body feels.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard nothing but great feedback.
Yeah.
I do notice, though, when they're incorporating meat back into their diets, they get sick really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, to that point, how would you recommend someone who's only doing the plant-based diet for maybe a 30-day trial period, and then they want to introduce meat back into their diets?
Mm-hmm.
What would you recommend the steps on doing that without having to get sick, for example?
Honestly, I don't know much about it, to be honest. Just because I don't really know a lot of people who reintroduce meat into their diet after, but that reaction is very common when it comes to food sensitivities and foods that your body doesn't take well. So for someone, there's something called the elimination diet. So basically eliminating all very common food sensitivities out of your diet for about 6 weeks, 5 to 6 weeks, and then reintroduce one food at a time just to see your body's reaction. A lot of people get really sick when, reintroducing something like gluten or something like dairy. There's a lot of digestive, symptoms, even headaches and things like that. Is very common when your body is really thriving on the food it's been getting, and all of a sudden is like, this is a toxin. So that's, it's when you have food poisoning, you're puking things out, you're not feeling good, that you're cramping. It's just, they're all signs of your body trying to really expel that thing and giving you signals of, hey, this is not a great thing for me. And our body's always trying to send out signals. And to, your earlier comment on not a full plant-based diet, I don't believe everybody should be on a full plant-based diet. So please don't get me wrong. I'm not here to convert because there are certain body types that actually thrive on meat. And if you do better on meat, by all means, go for it.
Totally.
But I do believe that a plant-based diet is so much better for the environment, so much better for the animals when it comes to ethic reasons. But I mean, even if one, like a meatless Monday, things like that, that's been really popular.
Yeah.
And you're still changing the world. You're still making a difference. It doesn't have to be like, I'm going cold turkey.
Yeah.
Rather than, anyway.
That's true. Like if a billion people were doing that once a week, that's a massive change. So I really love that. That's a great tip.
For our next question, I'd like to ask what you think the top 3 challenges our listeners may experience when making the change over to a plant-based diet.
I think one thing is what we already discussed is, not knowing what to make and just feeling really lost. Because like I said, everyone's like, let's have chicken breast, let's have a piece of steak, let's have pizza, things like that. It's because marketing strategies, because all the money behind these industries, is very easy to find options. Even if you go to supermarkets, it's very easy to just grab, I don't know, like a meat pie. Who eats meat pie? I don't know. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Grab a piece of chicken breast and throw it on the grill and we're good to go. So I think when it comes to that, again, it takes a lot more planning, a little bit more time consuming than a meat-based diet. But I mean, I think it's doable. Everybody can do it. It's just whether or not you're willing to. And also, like I said previously, you gotta know your why. If you're just doing it because you're like, oh yeah, game changers, it's not a life-changing experience enough for you. Yeah.
Totally. So you mentioned how we're so used to going to grab a piece of pizza or something from a supermarket that's quick and easy. What would be your favorite plant-based restaurant that you would go to just to pick something up, if there are any out here in Toronto?
I went to one in Yorkville recently.
Planta,
yeah, for my good friend's wedding. I think
that's the only one I know.
Yeah. It was good. You know what though? Like, and this was like the demographic was like carnivores. Like, like everybody was just like, what are you doing to us? Like, we're roasting the groom. Like, how could you pick this place? Because his wife is plant-based. So then he picked that, you know, out of love and whatnot. But honestly, it was good. Like, the appetizers was a bomb. Like, everything they brought to us. They even had this, like, plant-based ice cream, and it was fire. Like, I enjoyed the entire meal. Like, it was so good.
I wanted to try it out a couple times, and my boyfriend, obviously a big meat eater, he's like, what am I going to eat over there? And then I'm like, but there's so many options. Exactly. And I've heard so many positive things, like Andre just mentioned. Everything was delicious.
Yeah. So
I think it's just...
You have to be open-minded,
open.
yeah. Exactly. And just try it.
Exactly.
Like, you just never know, you know?
For sure.
Like, I had a friend of mine who's like, I think 7 years older than me at the time, but I was like 20, 21, and he'd like drag me everywhere. All these different restaurants, like, you just gotta come. And I was like the pickiest eater. But honestly, I'm so grateful for having had that friend at that time in my life, because it opened up my mind, my palate, and like, there's so many foods I enjoy now that in a million years I never thought I would. So that's what I would suggest to people. Just go out and try. And honestly, like, the worst thing that could happen is, like, you know, you waste a little bit of money, which is not the greatest thing in the world, but it's also not the end of the world, right? Sure. Like, you're trying to accomplish something, you're trying to experience something new. And if you don't like it, don't try it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
Yeah, Fresh is another one. Sorry, I just...
yes.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. But yeah, they're everywhere. They're everywhere in downtown Toronto, so... If anyone's
Comfort and Kim as well.
Are they plant-based?
I think they have plant-based options.
Right. Okay.
Very great restaurant. I go there all the time, and I like meat, so I love it over there.
Good to know.
So to conclude our discussion today, for those who are listening, would you recommend them a plant-based diet? Yes or no?
I don't like black and white answers. A simple answer, yes, for sure. And I think everyone, like you guys mentioned, should, you know, have an open mind when it comes to trying a new diet, I mean, I don't think it should be a diet. I think it should be a lifestyle, you know, things that you should incorporate into your habit, into your everyday life. But give it a try and see how your body feels, but make sure you don't do it like half-assed, do it properly so your body's getting all the nutrients it needs. I wouldn't worry too much about the nutrients that you're not getting, because, you know, a lot of, you know, people think that we're not getting iron in plant-based diets, we're not getting enough folate, we're not getting enough this or that. It's honestly is not... It's not going to be a huge deficiency. If you eat chicken breast every day, you're going to be deficient in every single area of your life. So if you eat a well-rounded whole food plant-based diet, you'll be fine. And, you know, you can, like, you know, you mentioned, Melissa, you can reintroduce meat after 30 days and see how your body feels. Maybe you're going to feel like crap. You never know. Or you're going to be like, oh my gosh, thank God I can eat meat again. So in that sense, then your body craves meat, then keep eating meat. I mean, I'm not telling you not to eat meat, but I do recommend really cutting back on dairy if you can, just because it is a known, you know, inflammatory food. And also with red meat, I believe the World Health Organization, maybe last year or 2 years ago, did declare it a probable carcinogen, so meaning that there's a possibility that it could cause cancer. And processed meats, you know, like salami and bacon and things like that, I'm
Italian, so that just broke my heart a little.
I'm sorry. That's a grade 1 carcinogen, meaning that it will definitely cause or lead to, cancer. So just be careful when it comes to things like that. And always, if you're getting meat, get it from a legit source where they're raising good locally raised meat. But yeah, give it a try. You never know until you try. Andre didn't know he liked plant-based foods until he went to Planta. So
yeah,
you never know.
It's true. You're definitely 100% correct. I just want to ask one final question on behalf of the athletes, not to give away your trade secrets, and but I wanted to know, like, for our athletes out there, like if they were to work with a practitioner like yourself, a coach like yourself, what can they expect in terms of like programming? You can dumb it down so you're not giving away your trade secrets. Like, what can an athlete expect from a coach like you if they were to seek you out?
So an initial assessment, of course, understanding what people's goals are, what sport you're playing, what your body needs essentially. And obviously everyone has different goals. Everyone needs different source of nutrients, and also how your body reacts to certain things. So understanding that, and then going from there, finding or building a program that is customized and that's ideal for that person's body type. So, there are certain people who are super muscular. They're just naturally muscular versus someone who, needs to really eat a lot more protein or healthy fats and less carbs to get that muscle mass. So it really depends on the person. And also, another thing is what people like. And I usually, when I work with my clients and ask them first things, what do you absolutely hate? If you hate broccoli, I'm not going to put broccoli in your diet. And so again, in your own journey to discover plant-based foods is understanding what you work well with. Because if you just keep shoving broccoli down your throat every single day, you're going to hate it. And you're going to be like, I'm going to go back to eating chicken. So, that obviously really is applicable to athletes as well. You're not going to thrive on something that you hate, and your body's going to have an adverse reaction to it, and your mind is going to be not happy about it either. And have a really regimented plan. So, let's say breakfast, lunch, dinner, 2 snacks during the day, and have very specific feeding times depending on your training schedule, depending on your sleep schedule, depending on your work schedule, whatever it may be. Again, just like the diet itself, it's all about planning when it comes to having a good, solid plan that will lead you to whatever your goals are at the end.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today and just kind of enlightening us more on, plant-based lifestyle, never mind diet, like a plant-based lifestyle, and then just diving a bit into the difference between, let's say, like an average individual who's not necessarily like a high-performance athlete, as well as the high-performance athlete side of things. I think you did very well in terms of like even kind of answering some of the challenging questions that we had in terms of kind of debating some of the common, talking points right now in terms of like plant-based diets. So I really appreciate you putting up with our shenanigans.
Anytime.
Yeah, like we'd definitely love to have you back in the future. Like this is an amazing topic, and I feel like it's just going to continue to become more known, more mainstream, and more people are going to be curious about it. So as you progress in your journey, we'd definitely love to have you back to continue to learn more and explore this a little bit more. So we appreciate you coming onto our show and helping us unbox this a little bit more. And like you said, helping us discover what's out there, right? Things that we may not have known before or we knew a little bit about. We're able to kind of fill our cup a little bit more today. So I felt that way. Melissa, what about you?
100%. I'm actually going to look into the plant-based nutrition diet a little bit more, find out my why, if there is one, and maybe give it a try.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, guys. We've been brought to you by Zenbox. Take control, download Zenbox on the App Store today and begin your journey of discovery and self-elevation. Thanks again for lending us your ears, and we'll be back next week. Take care.